Hello and welcome to the video. This is my annual roundup of the kit picks that I would recommend if you are into or getting into radio control, specifically around things like wings, airplanes, quads. So in this, I'm going to look at all the standard stuff. Now, I've been doing one of these for quite a long time now. It tends to be about August, so it's this time of year, and it's a great opportunity to revisit some of the kits that I really like. Now, a couple of things before we get too far into this. This list is absolutely subjective. What is best or better for me might not be best or better for somebody else. So I think it's important that we define what best and better looks like for me, because in the forums and online and in comments, I hear the words best and better being talked about an awful lot, and they are meaningless terms unless you define what you mean by better or best. So first of all, let's talk about the fact that I am a general pilot. I like to fly lots of different things. It isn't just one part of the hobby that particularly interests me. So I like to fly quadcopters, I like to fly smaller whoops, up to freestyle stuff, to explorer class, regular 5-inch quads, all kinds of stuff. I also like to fly wings and airplanes too, and we've been lucky in that there's been some cool stuff come out recently. I'm also a big fan of tinkering and building, so the prospect of having to fire up a computer, download an application or a program to get something to work doesn't particularly worry me. However, for some pilots that starts to get into the realms of tricky and they want it a little bit more plug and play rather than having to tinker with stuff. But for me, the tinkering is part of the fun. For me, a fantastic flying day is me going to the field with a handful of models that I trust, that I love to fly, with a flying buddy and flying around and having a lot of fun. The majority of the flying will probably be done in FPV, and probably these days almost exclusively done with HD FPV2. So for me, flying is a time to relax and enjoy myself, not about learning a new skill and really challenging myself in the way that some pilots with helicopters and some of the freestyle pilots do. I also like technologies that give pilots a lot of choice and have interoperability with third parties. I don't like vendors who are very proprietary, who actively try and discourage you from branching out into other vendors' technology and try and lock you in. That kind of Apple way of working can be very useful if you are a pilot that doesn't like that kind of open source third party, I have to download a computer program to make everything work way of doing stuff. But for me, I find that too restrictive. So let's talk about the flight controllers that I like to use for things like iNav and Betaflight. Matek and SpeedyBee and HolyBro actually are probably the three that I tend to go for. At the moment, most of the builds that I'm doing for iNav with wings or airplanes, if you've been watching the series, particularly things like the iNav for Beginners 2023 series that's currently running, you'll notice that I'm using an F405 Woman WMN board. They are small, compact, although they're not using F7 CPUs, which tend to be a little bit more expensive. They have lots of UARTs for connections for all your different bits and pieces, and because of their small size, they'll fit pretty much anywhere. For ArduPilot, the gold standard is obviously going to be the CubePilot Cube Orange Plus, as it is now. That is a very expensive flight controller, but the ones that the professional UAV guys use. But you've also things like the HolyBro Durandal, things like the Pixhawk 6C and the 6C Mini that I've featured on the channel as well. They're great, cheaper alternatives. And then if you want to go for third-party boards, you also have the Matek Wing series of boards, which are really good too. And they're fully supported by ArduPilot. So those would be the choices that I would use if it was an ArduPilot build. I get a lot of questions about should I use iNav or Betaflight, or should I go for ArduPilot when I'm doing my build. I have a whole video that talks about choosing between those. Personally, I wouldn't choose the hardware first. I would choose the flight control system that's going to more closely fit with what you want to do with the model that you're building, and then choose the flight controller hardware that fits best for that system. So don't buy the flight controller first and then try and shoehorn the operating system firmware on that you want. I would do it the other way around. Last couple of things, talking about GPS, I use a lot of Matek GPS units here. You don't have to use them. Lots of the GPS units kicking around that are very cheap and cheerful will still work. M80 style GPSs And also the batteries that I'm currently buying and using these days since Hobby King left the UK are pretty exclusively the Gens Ace stuff. There's the R-Line version 5s, which are fantastic for really demanding applications. There are the ones, the endurance stuff that is better in a very small package for putting a lot of milliamp hours in. Sadly, still struggling to find a vendor that produces really good lithium ion packs in both 18650 and also in the 21700 sizes. If you know of a vendor in Europe or the UK who does sell lithium ions that are good quality, then I'd love to know. Please pop a comment down below. In terms of the radios that I suggest, if you're looking at them now, it's pretty much RadioMaster through and through. I still use my old aging Taranis. My Taranis dates back to about 2015, so it's getting on for about 8 years old now. It's had upgrades and stuff. Still running OpenTX. I don't use that for the latest technologies like Express LRS, but it's perfect for stuff like Crossfire. And I also have my RadioMaster TX16S Mark II. I really like that radio. It's a bit big and bulky, but it has all the switches you need, irrespective of whether you're flying a little quadcopter, a Whoop, or whatever. If you're looking for smaller radios, then I think, things like the Boxer, fantastic from RadioMaster, but also things like the Zorro, but also the new Pocket as well. For those pilots getting into the hobby now, I would say that Express LRS should be the radio system of choice. That is the open standard that now is pretty solid. It's been in development for long enough that all the kinks that I used to worry about have been sorted out, and they're now looking at increasing the ease of use for it. So rather than you have to always have your computer on to change everything, that interoperability and that automated binding and connection updating is going to get better as we go forward. I used to really like the multi-protocol module radios. I'm moving more away from those now because those NPM modules are more about supporting legacy receivers that you might already have in models, whereas for future stuff I would recommend using Express LRS systems. In terms of the goggles that I'm using, well, when I go to the field these days, it's usually my Walksnails. Walksnail has become my HD system of choice. See all my videos about why that is. And I also have the HDO2, the Fat Shark analog goggles that have the Walksnail VRX system on there as well. I've done videos about that too. I still fly the DJI system and I still like the DJI system. The DJI FPV system is very good. I fly with the version 1 system and the O3 Air units too, but the new stuff that I'm building is all Walksnail based. Irrespective of what people will claim on the forums and in YouTube videos, no HD system is better than the other one. And what I mean by better and best in this instance is some of them are better at latency, some of them are better at range, some of them are better at openness, working with third parties, some of them have better hardware. It's all relative. It just happens that Walksnail, for the way that I fly, for the things that I like to do, is a much better fit and feels more like an analog evolution. Not in terms of the picture. The picture is pretty much the same as far as I can see of the other HD systems that I'm playing with, but in terms of the ease of use. Chargers, there are a couple of chargers that I love. Behind me still there is my Gens Ace iMars Dual 2-port charger. It gets used about every day at the moment and it is going strong. I had an original one that developed a fault and was replaced under warranty, and things like that make me feel very happy. Chargers are an investment in the hobby and you need to get the best one you can. I'm also a big fan of the SkyRC Q200. That is a big 4-port charger, not very recent, but I have had this one for quite a few years and it just keeps trucking along. It's the one I pull out when that little 2-port charger behind me isn't going to cut the mustard and charge the batteries in the time that I've got. I also use ISDT stuff, but not as often now. I used to have an ISDT D2 that was one of my favourite chargers before the Gens Ace replaced it in my affection. Loads of RC tools. I'm not going to pick any of these out in particular. I'll just let you read this list on the right hand side. Don't forget that everything I'm talking about here I have used and made videos on. The whole point of me producing this list is that I'm very lucky, as somebody that plays with radio control technology all the time. I get my hands on lots of stuff. However, it's only a small portion that I will continue to use for myself for my own part of the hobby, and these kind of things here by the side of me are the tools and stuff that you'll find if you see my building bench or you watch my building videos. And just as always, you will notice the same names appearing in the slides again and again. There are vendors that I personally trust, that are run by people that I like, that have a great attitude towards the community, working with pilots and producing good innovation, but also support after the fact. They're varied in terms of what they produce, but usually if a vendor is one of the people here on this list and they produce something new, you'll pretty much guarantee I'll get it in. And that's because these vendors have a reputation, particularly with me, but lots of other people, of producing good stuff that's worthy of your time and money. So out of all the slides that we've done, this is probably the most important one. What do I actually fly? Of all the stuff that I've had in, of all the technology that I've got my paws on, that I've done reviews and setups and played with, which are the ones that I actually take to the field? If you saw me at a flying field, what would I have in the bag with me? What would be in the boots of the car? Well, as I already said, walk snail goggles is absolutely going to be there now. I have converted most of my favourite models over to walk snail from analog if they weren't already having the DJI system in them. When I'm using Crossfire or just using the receivers that I still have lots of kicking around, I'm still using my trusty Taranis radio from FreeSky. That is a very old radio now, but it's still performing really well. I'm going to be very sad the day that that finally gives up the ghost. The other radio that I'm using a lot that you're seeing in videos is my RadioMaster TX16S Mark II with the CNC or bling on it, and also the AG01 gimbals. That is a beautiful radio, again quite big and chunky. I really hope that RadioMaster produce a smaller, more compact one that's kind of a Taranis size, because that RadioMaster with that big screen is a hunk of a radio. But I still like mine, and that colour screen is very nice when you're using Lua scripts to monitor telemetry from your models. Wings and planes, you're going to see me flying all the time. Of course, there's got to be the Atom RC Dolphin. Continues to be my top #1 pick over everything else. The Atom RC Dolphin is just fabulous. If you haven't got one already, then, you know, if you're thinking of treating yourself to something else, check out the Dolphin would be my advice. The Atom RC Swordfish is also a fantastic twin-engined glider style, nice and quiet, very efficient, very relaxing to fly, and looks beautiful too. And there's also the new Atom RC Penguin that I looked at recently, a small, more compact twin with a really, really interesting FPV nose, perfect for HD FPV systems. All of those from Atom RC are excellent. In addition to those, there's other things that I really like, things like the He-Wing Ranger T1, which is the little twin plane. I love that. That is a fab thing. There's also the He-Wing F01, also called the Diatone Ripper, which is this kind of little wing, much less floaty than things like the Baby AR Wing Pro, much more about speed and cutting through the air. And all of these three things, the Baby AR Wing Pro, the He-Wing and also the Ranger, are really nice models too that you'll see me flying often. Quads, this changes pretty regularly, but these are three that would regularly appear in the bag. You will find things like the Gep RC Crocodile Mini, the HGRC Recon 5 and 6. I've just updated my Recon 6 to Walk Snail, and also some of the Armatan ones, things like the Armatan Tadpole HD is a beautiful little model as well. And interestingly, Armatan has just been sold to an outfit in America. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with that brand over the next 6 months. VTOLs is an interesting one. I don't think I've had any VTOLs in yet that have really floated my boat in terms of the way that the setup is done. I wish that all VTOL vendors took a lot more time and effort tuning and setting up the models before they ship them. Ideally, testing every single model before it is shipped, both in the hover, transition, forward flight, and the transition back to hover before you sent it as a customer would be great. I appreciate that that would push up the cost a lot, but some of the really expensive VTOLs that I've had in here have still had really, really terrible configurations. I'm currently working on that, and there'll be more videos on the VTOL stuff soon. So in summary, that's the stuff that I would recommend, and the things that I've mentioned in these lists and the vendors that I'm talking about are the ones that I trust that I would recommend that you look at. You absolutely can get other stuff from other vendors that are cheaper and much more cheerful in terms of the price point. However, I have found in my many decades in this hobby that if you buy cheap, you're probably going to end up buying twice. And although there is absolutely an argument to be made for buying cheaper stuff if you're going to destroy it, sometimes buying cheaper stuff can be a false economy because you end up getting into trouble. A great example of that is in the early days of the hobby when LiPos came out. I invested in an iMars B6 charger that turned out to be a clone because it was slightly cheaper than the other ones I found on the internet back then. So I then had to buy another one, a real iMars B6 charger, and then that one worked properly. Some of the kit that you buy in the hobby, particularly when you realize that radio control flying is for you, are investments. So things like the good charger, things like a good radio, things like a good set of goggles are things that you will buy once every 5 or 6 years. So make sure that the investment you're making has that kind of life in it. And then if you kind of think about how much money you're paying over those 5 or 6 years for the technology, it's an awful lot less. And if you're not constantly upgrading and selling stuff on eBay, then you can really sweat those assets and get the absolute maximum amount of value out of them. And that's personally why I recommend the stuff that I do, because it usually has the longest legs. Last couple of things just to mention is that this list changes all the time. I have only updated it just before I made it to talk about the new radio from RadioMaster and also the new Atom RC Penguin, which was only reviewed on the channel recently. If I made this video again in 2 or 3 months' time, there's probably going to be some changes. However, an awful lot of this video is the same as the one that I did this time last year. And the last thing is, wherever you can, buy your stuff from a local radio control model shop and support those people. We lost an awful lot of them through things like Banggood and AliExpress coming into the market, and then things like COVID didn't help them at all. The ones that are left are really, really working hard to make it work as a business, and where you can, I would recommend buy your stuff from those people. I have a local radio control shop here at Steve Webb's, which is near to me here in Cheshire, and it's worth its weight in gold for those times where I need to go in and actually physically look at something, whether it's a replacement servo or control rod linkages or whatever. It's fabulous to be able to physically go in and see this stuff before you buy it. So that's my last piece of advice. If you have a local model shop that's handy, I would try and support them as much as you can. Most of the model shops that I've ever been in have been full of people who are passionate about the hobby, who will absolutely help a new pilot if you go in there and ask a polite question about something that you're interested in. So thanks again for watching. Hopefully that's been interesting for those of you that are looking at it. Anything that you think I've missed, do pop it in the comments down below, and we'll put a pin in that there, and I'll revisit it in about 12 months' time. Thank you for watching the video. If you watch my videos and find them useful, then please take a moment to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the channel a lot. If you really like what I'm doing here, you can become a Patreon and support the time I spend helping others and get access to lots of exclusive benefits. Link is in the video description. Remember that all the videos on the channel are organized into playlists, so you can easily use those playlists to find all the videos on a subject that you are interested in. Add Painless 360 to your searches on Google and YouTube, and it'll help you find my content for any particular topic. Thanks again for watching, and as always, happy flying.